In the next conversation, which is titled Success Secrets of 15 Entrepreneurs, we're going to hear some really practical, secrets from the trenches, things that will set our pulse racing and then say, hey, I need to do this to, start up my venture. I hope that will happen. And to anchor that, this is going to be a conversation between Ujwal Kalra and Shoaib Ahmed. I'd love for Ben to come on stage and introduce Shoaib. Shoaib and Ujwal, please come on stage first. Please, welcome. And a round of applause for them, please. And I'm going to let Ben introduce Shoaib because they go back a long way.
My pleasure to introduce Shoaib. Before I introduce him formally, I'd say that we were college mates. He was busy with elections, fighting elections, and I was busy in NCC, and both of us ended doing very averagely in studies. Okay, so I'd forgotten to mention this in my launch of the badminton book, which 6 months back. But I remember to mention this, that he had suggested that I read this book called Inner Tennis. So if you have a chance, please pick it up. It's a small book. It is a complete book. It's self-help. It can be read by founders, startup founders, anybody. It's an amazing book. Please pick it up. And Shoaib is by working hard and taking chances for many years.
He designed his luck.
Designed his luck, yes. Designed his luck. Why I say lucky is that he's one of the few founders and entrepreneurs who's exited and made good money. Round of applause, please. Because that's the dream of every founder, to exit and make good money. He's planning to write his memoir. Good luck with that. And he's played a key role in what Tally is. I'm sure everybody know this company Tally. Yeah, so he's one of the architect. Of course, the founder is a brainchild, but he helped Tally to innovate and where it is today. What he does today is he mentors founders. So any of you want mentoring, please go to him. His contribution to the software community is that he's one of the co-founders of iSpirit. iSpirit is, difficult to expand it. You can expand it later. It is a community of software founders who are responsible for what Bangalore is today. Nearly 2 decades back, it was started for what Bangalore is today because of iSpirit. So communities do influence outcomes, ecosystem building. So I'll leave here and then hand over the mic to Shoaib to take it forward. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much, but I think today I'm so excited to be here because got a chance to read another book. Benedict sent it to me and said, look, you need to be in this session. Secrets, and you need to know a few of the secrets yourself and don't just take your secrets. Ujwal has done some phenomenal research and check it out. My first reaction was, another book, and that on startups. What can be different? Everything which is to be written has already been written. And I must say, Ujwal has been a phenomenal job. And it's exhaustive. And I have to put a disclaimer here. I'm a little nervous about the need for. Okay, is this better? Yeah. The need for my coaching or guidance. All that you need to do as a startup is actually pick up this book, and all the questions and answers are there. And I'm being honest. So, congratulations on this.
Thank you so much.
It's been a phenomenal thing, and I will come to a little bit more about it as we speak. The first thing which struck me about the book, I was reading the forward, it's from Narayanmurthy, none other than Narayanmurthy, and most of his wisdom we've all know, right? I mean, at some point in time or the other, he's talked about it. But what struck me most was his journey from being a socialist to bordering on being a communist, thinking that, the only way to save the world is through that ideology. And his personal experience in the early days. I don't know if anybody knows this, it's there in the book, but he's clearly spoken about a lived experience. His lived experience, which was fascinating, is when he was traveling in his early days to Bulgaria. In a train journey, they made it very hard for him. In Bulgaria, at that point in time, was a hardcore communist state. I mean, it's like going to Mecca. And you get disillusioned with the religion. You get disillusioned with your practices because just see in the lived world, this is not what you set out to do. Okay. Is this better? Is this better? Oh my God. Okay. Okay. I hope this works. Yeah? Okay, cool. So just coming back to the story, he then talks about how he got deported and ended up being in Istanbul. And a terrible journey for him, and came back home completely disillusioned, leading up to what he became a capitalist, a compassionate capitalist. And why this story struck to me was separately, my 20-year-old was studying in college. She's going through the various ideologies and communism. And when we talked about it, I was so excited about her literature, which she was reading, that I said, yeah, when I was in college, I had a deep belief in communism myself. And she looked at me and said, Dad, what happened to you? Look at your lifestyle now. Where did your ideologies go? And all of us had this burning thing to say, look, hey, we need to do something and make a difference. And my question to Ujwal, because, hey, these were some anecdotal experiences, these were my experiences of saying, yes, I want to make a difference. But, making money becomes an important driver. So, Ujwal, my first question to you, with these 15 entrepreneurs, that many of them you've been very fortunate to meet with a lot of people over the years, what's been the sense of the construct of the entrepreneur? How much of it is driven by, hey, I want to make a difference? How much of it is purpose driven? How much of it is all stakeholders should benefit? How much of it is, hey, only investors should? Not true, but so that's a kind of a sentiment that I want to pick from you, saying what's been your learning and how have you been able to synthesize this?
Okay, firstly, thanks a lot, Shoaib, for the introduction. On that, what I've realized is that, so there are upwards of 70,000 registered startups in India. Very few make it big, right? And one of the things which I've noticed is that there is always something underlying, something which is very fundamental. Money is not fundamental. Money is an outcome, right? So therefore, the question is, and there's also a reason to it. The question is, why are you starting up? What's that fundamental reason for you to start up? For me, the fundamental reason to start up was, so I remember that conversation with my father. This is back in 2010. And he asked me the same question. I told him that I want to make a difference. I want to, making something, building from scratch, and that makes a difference is something which really makes me happy. The reason to get to that why, which is not an outcome metric, which is money or fame or something around that, but something more fundamental, is because the startup journey will have its own ups and downs, right? And we've read this a lot, that this journey will have peaks, troughs, and so on. And my co-founder is also here, Sambhav, and we are going through that journey of ups and downs. You need that's something that's fundamental to hold on to that, to make you sane and to make you believe that come whatever may, that why is something fundamental, and you will go through that. You will go through that, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Or is it all this why and all this good stuff? Is it because Simon Sinek made it popular?
No, not really. So in fact, it started when I was having conversation with Sanjeev Chandani regarding this thing itself. And in fact, it's at the start of the book is before you start up, you need to unravel that. And if you don't, then the journey will not be, at the end, it's a journey, right? You're not chasing an end goal, it's a journey in which you are in. And if you don't enjoy that journey, it's worthless.
Yeah. So I have to add a little bit to this because that forced me to think, why did I start my business just out of 1 year of work experience out of college when it was not sexy to do this kind of stuff? I mean, there wasn't even this so-called.
In fact, so during your time, I think even startup word was not even there.
It wasn't that. It meant that you didn't get a job. You had nothing else to do. You didn't get a job, you didn't go to US, you didn't go to the Middle East, and you're hanging around there waiting for something to happen. Right? But yeah, the simple way, and it can be as simple as this. I had sold to a few customers working for a company, and the delivery sucked. And they were just not able to live up to expectations. So making making expectations and not able to meet them. And I said, man, I need to do something about this. And that was all the why was. I mean, let me be honest, there was nothing else about changing the world and all the rest of it, creating an impact. Came much later, like I said, when I got educated. But at that point in time, it was just this, that look, it's a reputation that you need to build. You need to go back there to the person. Forget about even the guy loving you and promoting you. It's as visceral as this. So just to, and you didn't come back and ask me any questions while writing the book, Ujwal, I have a problem with you.
Probably I'll have a part 2 to write at some point in time. but on that, so a question to you is, at that time, as you mentioned, that startup wasn't even a word, let alone a fancy word, right? And failures were looked down upon. How, when you said to your family that you would want to start up, how was their reaction?
Oh, very interesting. The closest person in the family who mattered most was my mom. My dad had passed away, and he was a lawyer by profession and a high court judge. And it's coincidental. Separately, there's a Chinese saying that for a boy to become a man, he has to kill his father at 18. My father had died by then. So the point being is metaphorical, of course, but you need to be able to step out of your family shoes, right? And it's important. But you need to be able to stand for yourself. And you're not going to get the support. I mean, it's given, especially if you don't have a business family, so to speak. And I can understand my mother's anxiety. I mean, her insecurities would have been huge. Here was a guy, here was a person who should have potentially gone into something safer. And he's gone in and saying, yeah, I want to do this business. And for the longest period, whenever anybody asked her what her son is doing, she would say, I don't know. In a manner of speaking with a complete sense of disappointment that I think he is wasting his time. He could have done something better, right? I could feel for her, and she wasn't communicating beyond it. She said, okay. She also was educated enough to say, look, let him find his own. Right, and gave me the freedom. But the thrill was in her last 10 years of life. I mean, there was a complete transition because the pride was humongous and it was well worth it. So the point being, yeah, the family is an important one, but you need to back yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. So yes, that was an important piece. And so a couple of things on on the book itself, some of the things which you talked about. You've talked about, for instance, the product, the MVP.
Correct.
Right? So in the early days, what do you do? How do you get, and we'll come to the funding piece, but the interesting question was, how do you create a product and and to create a minimum viable product. And you spoke to quite a few founders. And I was intrigued with this because when we were growing our business, or when, even though it's a software business, this term again was not there in our lexicon. And you either created a product which worked or you didn't. So this for me is a piece of bullshit. So please respond.
Right. So the way Shoaib we define MVP is it's a minimum viable product, which is, so look, when you think of an idea, right, you start with a customer problem, that this is the problem and this is a solution which might work. The keyword over here is might, right? Because you're sitting in your room discussing with your friends who eventually become your co-founders. But the question is still about might. MVP is that journey from might to it will work. And the thing is that whatever you're thinking in your rooms, that when you go into the market, it's everything is upside down. The market teaches you. If you come with a big product with 10 features, and when you go into the market will say, boss, this is not even what is required. Yes, this is my problem, but something other part of it is required. I'll give you one example which we've quoted in the book. So this is how the product Ather Energy, they make scooters, electric vehicles, right? So they started their journey in 2013. For 2 years, they just kept on making motors, chassis, transmission, and so on and so forth. And when I was talking to Tarun, who's the founder and co-founder and CEO of Ather, he said, that's the biggest mistake I've done. I spent 2 years in just building that thing, which I don't even know whether that worked or not. What was required was just to get one motor and one Nexus 7 tablet, because the hypothesis they were testing for was a fast electric vehicle with some electronic components around that. That's it. There was nothing about sturdiness. There was nothing about what's the mileage and so on and so forth. That was the hypothesis. And if they would have done that, probably they would have cut down their cycle to 6 months instead of 2 years.
And if you had to launch this book of yours with an MVP, what would you have done, Ujwal?
So that's a different thing.
Just kidding. Okay. Doesn't work for all. It doesn't. It's not a. And I'm just saying, don't make that the holy grail.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the only.
So I'll tell you the framework which now I'm thinking of it is whenever there is a fast iteration cycle. On that, in fact, Shoaib, we had MVP versions of our book. So just as a context, it took 4.5 years to write the book and for the book to come out.
To become what it is today.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yes.
Questions? Yeah.
Oh, in fact, yes. That's a good point. So I'll tell you how the book, in fact, started. So this is back in IMA 2016 when we were thinking of कि क्या idea होना चाहिए, product कैसे build करते हैं, and so on and so forth. So at that point in time, there were a lot of gyan things which were there on YouTube, or you could go out and read. While there were also a lot of inspirational stories. But what we really needed is those inspirational stories clubbed with tangible learnings.
Sure.
So back at IMA, we started a series called How to Start a Startup, wherein the thesis was we divide the life cycle of a startup into 10 steps on thinking of idea, forming a team, building product, raising money, scaling it up. And we got the biggest of entrepreneurs, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, Ujwal Kalra, Kunal Shah, and so on. We put that on YouTube, and within 1.5 years, to my surprise, we got upwards of 4 million views on YouTube.
Fantastic.
That was
phenomenal. Super. Questions for him from the audience? This is good. And while, go ahead, anybody, just to provoke as we speak, the other issue from, which is besides the product, is the funding. So if anybody has some questions, happy for the expert here from Ujwal to talk about. Any questions at all? Yes?
Did any of the founders regret taking VC money?
Oh, all of them. Sorry. Sorry. But they will not confess this. You know why? Sorry, this is an exaggeration. There's no such thing as all of them. but, and that's not a fair statement. So, sorry about that. I also wear a VC hat, by the way. So let me stand corrected. And my good friend here, Vineet, will also vouch for what I'm saying. He's a VC himself. But I think there is this tension of fast growth and like what Hari was saying in his earlier session about actually grooming the entrepreneur to be ready for that rapid race. And that tension causes frustration. So I think it's a combination of things, but I think you'll have a better answer on this.
I agree to that. It's always a pro and con side of thing, right? Money gives you, money to grow, guidance, and so on and so forth. But that also comes with a lot of things which you have to part with. That include, in some sense, I mean, it's a call which you take, whether you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond, right? So when you raise money, of course, there is benefits which include they give you advice for what they've seen across their portfolio, across the world. They also give you tangible, help in next set of funding, in hiring people and so on. But that also comes with, as Shoaib mentioned, there's some kind of a, I would say coherent tension, which is there is this thing whether you have to grow, how fast you have to grow, you also have to, burn money in some sense. So there is this always, in some sense, struggle which happens when there are multiple people who are also trying to push. The struggle really happens is when the visions are not aligned.
Yeah, and an inbuilt piece, and sorry, just want to add to this. We have been trained to think in quantity. And quantity is good. If I have 10,000 people in the audience, it's fantastic. If I have 50 people in the audience, not so great. Hey, but what about the quality? What about the takeaways? What about the learnings? What about the engagement? What about adding value? What about making a difference? It takes time, it takes effort. It means, recrafting, doing good stuff. It's not just numbers.
Yeah, absolutely on that. In fact, Shoaib, I'll add an example. So we were talking to Anu Hariharan. She's a partner at Brexit. Partner at Y Combinator. She gave an example. So Brex is a company, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. The founder of Brex, what he does is that he takes all the potential VCs on a trek with him. And during that trek, he tries to assess whether the vision of what I'm trying to build and what the potential VC is trying to see, whether that matches or not. Because that vision alignment is very, very important. So two parts to it. One is the vision alignment at the start, and the other is communication. Because let's be honest, shit will hit the roof. Right? And you have to be utter honest and have to have, in some cases, you may not even have a potential way out. You have to be honest and go to them and ask that this is what is happening. So that the thing is that it cannot work in silos. It's a partnership at the end of the day.
Sure. Wonderful. So to know more, please read Ujwal's book. And we'll have more conversations as well. And I'm sure it'll be fascinating. Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time. So thank you very much. This has been an excellent session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the wonderful conversation, Shoaib and Ujwal. Thanks a lot. As a small gesture of appreciation, may I request? Yeah, come on. Ben, will you do the honors, please? Come. No, it's okay. Be there. Thank you, Shoaib. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Ujwal. He's come all the way from Bombay, by the way, for this festival. Thank you. Lovely conversation. Thanks.